Today we are reviewing Positional Play by Aagaard. This is part of my personal quest to read or reread all of the books in the ChessDojo training program. Selfish pursuit, but also one where I hope to understand what's going on at every level of the dojo. Selfish in that I need to do it too. And one thing we believe at the dojo is that especially at the higher cohorts, 1800 plus, we need to put a lot of reps in where deep thinking is involved. And here, as the title suggests, we're looking at problems which have some kind of positional element to them. A comparable book, and I know professional reviewers, of which I'm not one, like to do comparable books, is this one, Evaluate Like a GM. This one is by our friend of the dojo, Eugene Perelstein and Nate Salon, is aimed maybe at a slightly lower rating group, but is interesting and different in that it's positions that are mostly not tactical. Ones maybe you could even look at it on the airplane, don't have to have your board out, where you just want to gain an intuitive sense of what's going on in the position. And so there's an element of that to positional play, though with this book there's many tactics involved, and I'll show a couple examples of what I mean by that. Now, a problem with the Aagaard books is, and I talked about this in my review of Calculation, as it suggests, a book with problems with calculation, is that they are often problems where the author has found, using the computer, some kind of blunder that a super GM or a strong GM makes, and then we're invited to try to find what the computer found. And that kind of problem often doesn't allow us to understand the human aspect of how we might solve things in real life over the board, right? And in particular, right, the analysis afterwards often misses like what was the human struggle to find the right move, because the computer makes it seem like everything's obvious afterwards. One also comparable book in that regard that I want to mention, I also reviewed it here, is Think Like a Super GM, also in the ChessDojo training program. And what I want to stress about that book that I feel like set a new standard, and that was published after the Aagaard book just came out, is that you take somebody like a super GM like Michael Adams, give him the positions, and then ask him to talk about what he sees in the position. How long does it take Adams to solve this problem? And then also you can see that even Adams doesn't get all of them right, which is very comforting for a chump GM like myself. By the way, also then, you know, taking a chump GM's view in there and like lower rated players all the way, sometimes all the way down to 1200 to get their human view of the position. So that's, I think, a new way of doing problems that's very important. This book, like most tactics books, is aimed at a certain audience. This one I would say is like 1800 plus, whereas this book I also reviewed here, Chess Tactics from Scratch, is aimed at a slightly lower audience. I still enjoyed the book, but like we have this at our, say, 1600 level cohort. So just as an example, that there are many great books out there. Many of them, I feel the greatest books are accessible, like game annotations are accessible to a very wide range of audience, but problem books often are tailored for a certain kind of group. Anybody who's striving to do deeper work, 1800 plus, needs to do a lot of reps of those kinds of positions where deep thinking is involved, where it's kind of strenuous and afterwards you're a little bit exhausted. This here, really interesting exchange sack position. This is Goganov against Kismatulin, 2012. And for me, this is both an interesting position, but also the main reason I chose to show it to you is it's an example of what happens when you let the computer show you the way. Interesting enough, it just hit me, we're going to have two problems with this structure. Maybe we call this the Shevchnikov structure here. It can arise from a variety of different openings. Black is aiming for f5. Now, what's the key problem? The knight is poor. Okay, so the first move that any chump GM, this would be myself included, would be the move that's actually recommended. However, and this is an example of just a computer-generated problem, the thing that Aagaard does not discuss is, I'm certain, the reason that Black did not play this move, knight b2. What does the knight want? It wants to activate itself. Or this is also interesting. The knight needs to do something, right? So the reason you would discard this move is you would say, well, boss, after rook c3, what do I do? what do I do? Because queen c2 is coming, boss. And then what's going on? Aagaard doesn't mention this at all. Mildly criminal. Then, so I asked myself, okay, can I find what the computer wanted, what Aagaard's computer wanted? And I realized what the computer wants here, and this is what black would have to see in order to play knight b2, is knight d3. Excellent. It's a beautiful move, but very computer driven, where you have to see that pop, pop, beautiful. In order to do the problem or explain it, you have to have that human explanation, because a GM, strong GM like black, I'm sure he looked at knight b2, but the thing that held him back was rook c3. So you got to conquer that pressure point, if you will. Two other positions that I thought were very interesting. And by the way, these kind of showed that, at least not with all the problems, Aagaard isn't using simply the computer. So again, we have what I would call a Sveshnikov structure. The prominent feature is, again, actually, a knight on the rim. The knight is absolutely miserable. This is Karjakin Van Bailey 2007. What was interesting is I could tell that Aagaard was using Karjakin's notes, and Karjakin played knight d2 with the intention of playing knight c4. Karjakin has some notes on this in ChessBase. If you want, you can look and find them. I found it very anti-intuitive. Criminal. Criminal to go trade off that knight on a5. I wanted to play g4. And so I did cheat and look at the computer just to see what the computer felt. The computer kind of was on my side. And the intuition there was that normally we have to be careful with a move like g4, because that's not really our side of the board. However, with the knight on a5, we can say, well, our force count, boss. Our force count on the king side is pretty good. And the black's intention is f5, so we have to deal with f5. So I liked g4 a lot, and the computer kind of confirmed my intuition. But still, this is not for me to say, oh, I was so right. Just that was interesting to me, that knight d2, c4 really felt criminal. But, you know, I'm a chump GM, and Karjakin is a super GM, and that's what the guy did. Okay, another quick example. Emmanuel Bag against Almeida Quintana 2009. I'm certain Aagaard pulled this from Bag's notes to this game, and black played a very weird move, king f8, and Aagaard gave this like a double exclam. This little annotation here is not from me, that is from the ChessBase annotations that Bag gave to this move. I think it's super strange. I think it's like, wow, strange. First of all, the first thing you got to recognize is that White's intention is to play bishop e4, maybe remove this dude, maybe get some juice going with g4. So that's the main thing that black has to deal with. My intention was queen b6, with the idea that on bishop e4, I can either play queen d4 directly or play bishop g4 first, and then the intention that if ed, I just go. And I say, you can have my pawn, boss, but you have unleashed the Kraken with bishop d4. And so this was another thing where I felt pretty strong about it, checked it with the computer, and the computer agreed. King f8, weird move, bud. Weird move, boss. Now, one thing I want to say, though, is even though I disagree with these moves, to me, it gives the book a little bit more of an interesting flavor when not every move is absolutely correct. For example, one of my favorite books, The Best Move by Jansa and Hort, there, the pre-computer, there's some very strong GMs looking at these positions, more than one, and they came to a conclusion that I feel suspicious of. And then, you know, I try to work it out on my own, have a little debate with the people before I turn on the engine. And, you know, usually I'm wrong, but still there's an element of debate. And as a training thing, well, I think it's very useful and interesting, right, to have that kind of debate, just to get the competitive juices with the book going. Okay, so there's my quick review. I like it a lot. I also feel like we need all the reps we can get. So even though there's criticism, even though I feel like there's better books, like at the higher levels, you need the reps, you need to put them in. And one thing I'm looking forward to do on the Dojo Talk soon is to rank the top problem books of all time. Okay, till next time.